All right. Super excited to have you here, Ed. If you guys are listening to this, then you officially have access to the private training that Mr. Ed Selkow has prepared for you guys. So this is super exciting. Thank you for sending in your questions, and we can't wait to get to them. Mr. Ed Selkow, again, not that they don't know you, but would you mind just introducing yourself real quick?
I've been in the cleaning business for almost 50 years now. During that time, I've started a number of cleaning services, all in the commercial area. And as well as that, I have been senior levels of management for a number of national companies also. My big play would have been the Janitorial Subcontracting Network, which I created and still manage today. And where we have this close to 30,000 companies that are involved in that in one way or another. And in the subcontracting network, it's significant because after the network it's a little over 10 years, but at year four, we had already exceeded $100 million in transactions through our little group. Okay. One of the keys to the thing was that I'm the only guy that didn't scrape money off the top. Okay, this was always to be as service back to the industry, and lots of people were going out of their minds. And even today, folks are trying to figure out how to make money duplicating what we did, and we have not done that. So that's pretty much that. Let's see, I have been involved in forming 2 national companies, and one was with Wall Street investors. So Selkow is approved in the cleaning industry by Wall Street, okay? Whatever that's worth.
Okay. I love that.
Yeah, I am semi-retired. I live on the west coast of Florida, a couple of blocks from the Gulf of Mexico. I have 9 grandchildren, and now it's time to have a little bit of fun, since I don't need anybody to hand over their keys. So
I love it. I love it. Well, I know, again, I just want to thank you for taking this time. I'm super excited, and I know the people will take a lot of advantage of this training. And of course, if after this training any questions come up, feel free to email it over to us or Ed if you need clarifications on anything when it comes down to production. But Ed, as you know, one of the biggest things in commercial cleaning, and obviously you know it, right, is how can I lower my cost or increase my revenue at the same time, right? And production seems to be overlooked by a lot of people. It's always like, how do I increase more sales or how do I pay people less, right? But right now you can't even pay people less at this point. So my question to you, let's begin here. How do you even improve production or productivity? How can I increase productivity without sacrificing quality before we get into the nuts and bolts?
Well, let me go back and just want to recount with our listeners here exactly how this happened. At one point, it was during the 1980s, I was involved in selling and cleaning the large downtown buildings, the big office buildings downtown. And what happened was that was a very, very, very specialized thing. There was probably at that point, there was only 3 or 4 of us that actually knew what to happen if you handed over a 40-story building. Everybody thinks it's much easier than it really is. Thankfully, the commercial real estate folks are smart enough to know that somebody with, 25 beauty parlors and a couple of laundromats are not going to be able to handle the level of cleaning that's going to be required in buildings where the highest rents are being paid by the tenants. Okay. The entire cleaning business is all about numbers. Okay. It's all about numbers. And so what happened was we were in pretty fierce competition. We all knew each other, but it was very, very, very competitive. And there was also a boom going on. There was a commercial real estate development boom going on. And in Tampa, a big, beautiful 40-story building was built and opened up. And so me and a couple of other fellows from the decent sized companies were real excited, and because one of us was going to get it, that's just the way things worked. We didn't know who, but one of us was going to get it. And what the big surprise was was that the developer and manager brought in a property manager out of Dallas, Texas, and he had high-rise experience, which was very, very important. And what happened was he brought his cleaning service with him to Tampa. Okay, and that would have been okay, but here was the problem. The problem was that we were cleaning approximately 4,000, just at 4,000, maybe 4,250 square feet an hour. Okay.
Mm.
The company that came out of Dallas, essentially it was a Korean company out of Dallas, and they were working at 6,000 square feet an hour.
Okay.
So what happened was in a fairly quick way, they started eating up some of these downtown buildings. And now I was a young fellow, but the people that I was competing against, most of them were older, and there was folks who didn't know what to do now that the new production standard was 6,000 square feet an hour. And we hadn't seen that, by the way. We had never seen anything like that. What I can tell you is that during a BSCAI convention, that we were all glued to a speaker during a workshop that was called "How to Get 5,000 Square Feet per Hour." So production was always an issue. Folks came out of Dallas; they had it down to a science. And what happened was really interesting. There was one fellow who. Whatever happened, there was folks that left the business. They retired. They just said, you know what, I'm out of the game. I don't want to play this anymore. It's too difficult. And so some people left. Some people found other areas to sell to, and pretty much the whole central business district cleaning situation was turned upside down because of these production rates. Now, what I figured out, now I'm young and stupid, all right. So all I'm thinking about is, well, these guys they don't want to play. And it seems to me that I've got an option. I can stand outside the game and complain about how the game is being played incorrectly. Or what I can do is I can stay in the game and learn how to compete. And that was the option that I took, was learning how to compete in this market. So this was really the first time where production became a huge issue for me. There was numerous ways to increase production. For example, what we did was we always counted on a 6% absentee factor. In other words, there was 6% of our workforce in any particular building was not going to show up, 6%. So we knew that. All right. And so what we were able to do is that's a little tiny increase in production. There was other things. Example, we hadn't spent a lot of time with one of the larger pieces of equipment, namely the face vacs. And think about it this way: if you've got a 12-inch vacuum cleaner and somebody's pushing that, what happens if that 12 inches now becomes 36 inches? Okay. What you've done is that you have increased the production on the vacuuming just based on the machine alone. All right. Now, this was there may have been backpacks, but nobody had made a big deal out of it at this point. At one point, one of the really significant milestones in our industry was not only the backpack vacuum cleaner, but the fellow who was the biggest proponent was Larry Schindler. And Larry Schindler created a cleaning system based around his vacuum cleaner. Okay. And so what he was doing, he was not only selling a piece of equipment, but he was also selling a way to utilize it and make money. So it was real interesting to, all of us who are concerned about production. Traditionally, there was different methods to clean a building. One was zone cleaning. The other one was what we used to call gang cleaning.
I like that. Zone cleaning or gang cleaning?
The term gang cleaning has since fallen by the wayside, like after the Godfather movies and Scarface. Nobody wanted to hear about gang. But what came out of that was team cleaning, and that was very, 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 very significant. The team cleaning process was taken over by a number of the larger companies that were involved in larger buildings. Okay. So that's just a little bit of background about how all of this came about. It was always about a competitor doing something and changing things. And I was hyper aware of that. I was hyper aware of that entire scenario. And so I just decided that I was going to play. I did not, I really, really, really liked cleaning nice buildings. All right. Now I did my time, cleaning, like restaurants and, doctor's offices and stuff like that. And I had already gone through that. And it was a whole lot more fun to be cleaning nice buildings, big buildings. And along the way, what I discovered was that it was easier to manage large account, much easier to manage a large account than it was to manage a small account. And so with that in mind, we went forward, and we were able to, within about 18 months, we were able to compete with everybody else downtown. And that was a big deal for us. There was myself, and like I said, there was about 3, 4, 5 people who were in that downtown central business district marketplace. And it was a big deal for us to stick around. A Korean company was coming in doing the 6,000 square feet per hour. The thing was that, it's not that hard to increase production rates like that, but to increase production rates like that and have a great deal of quality at the same time. Now that was noteworthy. All right. Before that, what it was kind of like was it was what we called ash and dash. Back in those days, there was ashtrays. People had ashtrays on their desks. And so one of the methods of drive-by cleaning was going through and dumping the trash in the ashtrays. And that was ash and trash and dash. So now there was an awful lot there was a big part of the marketplace where we were not going to be able to play this. In our healthcare buildings, we were not going to be able to. It was real difficult to increase productivity there because of the importance of what was happening as far as our end of maintaining these medical buildings. But for office space, I mean, it was just a piece of cake. So that's where that's kind of where this came from, at least in my area. And while this was happening here, I was in touch with other people in other parts of the country. It was also simultaneously going on in other places. At that time, the BSCAI was our primary trade association. The ISSA at that time had not ventured into the service end of it. They were strictly an organization for manufacturers and distributors of products, and they left pretty much the service end of this to the BSCAI. So this had captured the BSCAI, and what was interesting was how things were evolving. It was an evolution. Okay. So that's pretty much the lay of the land. But it was to answer your question, an increase in productivity has to do with people, processes, and tools. All right.
People, processes, and tools.
People, processes, and tools. There had to be a system. Okay. I became, the systems approach to cleaning was what pushed me to drop out of college at that time, where I was majoring in engineering, and look at the cleaning business as a serious business and a way to make a living. And that primarily came from, it was an article that I read that kind of changed everything for me. And what that article was, and it's still available, by the way, it was an article out of Harvard Business Review. And it was a professor named Theodore Levitt that wrote a small article called Production Line Approach to Service. That was a game changer. That was the first time.
Production line approach to service, correct?
Production line approach to service. Theodore Levitt, Harvard University. All right. You can still, if you Google it, you can still buy just the article itself. But that changed everything for me. And what I was able to see was that there were very, very solid principles. And it went something like this. First of all, if you think about what happens at a McDonald's, okay, at a McDonald's, what you have is you have people, and you have processes, and you have equipment. Okay. And so what happens back in the kitchen in McDonald's is that frozen French fries are dumped into a fryer. All right. A little button is pressed telling the operator when the French fries were done and to take them out. Okay. And the result was, from a manufacturing and production standpoint, that was quite amazing to be able to get the same French fries in Boston as you could in San Diego. Okay. The fact of the matter is that at home, you can't make a duplicate batch of French fries yourself. You can't do that. They don't always come out the same. All right. So that was a huge issue. And from there, what happened was, if you were to look at the entire scope of what was happening, again, it was people and processes and equipment all came together to create something that had not been done before. Okay. And essentially it was, all that happened was there was an assembly line approach to providing services in general. So that was a huge item for me, was a production line approach to service. By the way, if anybody's interested, I told the entire story if you Google my name and how a Harvard professor got me to become a full-time janitor. So I wrote about that because it was an interesting thing at that time. This was at a time where a few people considered this an actual business. I recall people saying, "Well, it's like this little moonlighting thing that people do." Being a banker, say, "Well, this is not really a business. What are your assets? We're talking about a couple of vacuum cleaners and some garbage cans. Is that really? We really can't." Classify this as a business. Okay. Now, what I was coming back with unsuccessfully was, well, let me ask you a question. Is a 1-year cleaning contract with the major utility, the electric company, to clean all their buildings for a year, you're telling me that that's not an asset? And that was one of the differences, was that everything was based on borrowing against assets and what kind of assets the company had. And it was a different time as far as the finance community went.
Yeah.
Now, that's a long way from where we are now. We just had, it didn't work, but we just had a group of Wall Street folks not too long ago pump $75 million into a cleaning service. So that's a long way from a banker turning you down and saying, well, this isn't really a business. So we've made some progress. We've made some
There's
progress.
definitely been a lot of progress. And you said that this isn't a blog that you wrote, right? You wrote about this, the hardware one, getting you into cleaning?
If you look up the Janitorial Growth Solutions blog spot, there's a number of articles in there. And at one point, it was said that it was one of the best blogs in the industry at the time. I wrote in there for about 3 years.
That way we can make sure we link it. That way people can get a chance to look at it. So you said, I like the production line approach to service. You said people, process, and tools. We've gotten some good, like zone cleaning versus team cleaning. I love that you said the 6% absentee on your buildings. I've never heard it. That's really cool. You're already preparing yourself for it, right? How do I audit my people, process, and tools to be able to kind of squeeze a little bit out? Because even, and correct me if I'm wrong, but even now, 6,000 square feet, even of just general cleaning, some companies still can't get there, can they? On a hourly basis, I guess.
Well, you've got to take into account the type of building that we're talking about, okay? When you're talking about smaller structures, that's more difficult, okay? You've got to have enough space in order to, pull something like that out, okay? It's not going to work in the beauty parlors and the laundromats. It's just not going to work. It doesn't matter.
So the main question would be, okay, so I'm hearing this and I'm going, okay, cool. I'm getting some golden nuggets from it already. how do I begin auditing my people,
Oh,
process, and tools so that I can say, okay, this is my next step?
okay. Now, if I were interested in getting another tattoo, which I am not, as a matter of fact, my last situation was I was removed by a plastic surgeon. Okay,
Oh
but
no.
if I were to consider another tattoo, it would be like right across here, and what it would say is the cleaning business is only about numbers. Period. That's it. Okay, it's just about numbers. So how we would evaluate that is very simple, is we would take a look at the individual workers, measure the space that they're actually cleaning, make a notation of what's within that space, okay, and then time them. Very simple.
So
And
you would be there in person with them, almost like
yeah, I
different than
guess
an
that's a great story. Let me tell you about that. I had the great fortune, and I've been very very fortunate in this business, and I can't I can't really take credit for an awful lot of good fortune that I've had. But at one point, I worked for what I believe is one of the great companies in the industry. They at that time that company only did buildings over 100,000 square feet, and they didn't understand about losing a building. The idea of doing a bad job and getting thrown out of a building was totally foreign to these people, absolutely and totally foreign. So what transpired was an opportunity to kind of pull the trigger on all this stuff and take a look at every single thing that we could do to increase productivity. Okay, and there was a number of tricks. One of them, and listen, I understand people's heads are going to explode, but look, if you want like a nice, pretty story, go to YouTube and look at all the idiots that are yammering about the cleaning business, which they know nothing about. Take a look at all that. What happened was that the production was increased by things like on a Friday night. Okay, on a Friday night, you'd have the supervisor go in and instruct the cleaning team. All right, tonight, dump the trash, clean the bathrooms, vacuum the traffic areas, and then punch out a half an hour early. Now, the reason you're going to punch out a half an hour early is we're going to have a training meeting. And the training meeting, now at that time, the training meeting was about bringing in some beer and some pizzas. That was it. That was the training. Okay. But what we were able to do is we were able to shave off 30 minutes on a Friday night. And if you shave off 30 minutes on a Friday night from a crew of 18 people, it's something. All right. And what I learned was that each one of these things were not gigantic. These were not gigantic things to do. They were relatively small things to do. But if you put enough of them together, what you would do is you'd slowly be increasing the production rate. And the opportunity came when there was a change in personnel. In other words, so on the fifth floor quit, and we're going to put somebody new in there. Okay. All right. Well, we're not going to train them with the same process, and we're not going to train them the same way that we trained the last group of people. Okay. We're going to cut some things out here. Okay. And a big part was it was just what we call skip cleaning. That was a big part of it, folks. There are
like that.
folks that are obsessed with what they call quality. And by the way, the next time you hear somebody from a cleaning service discuss quality, ask them to define it. Okay? Ask them to define exactly what you mean by quality. Okay. And here's the first stumbling block. Okay. They can't actually define it. All right. If you look on folks' websites in the cleaning industry, every single one of them talks about quality, but nobody will define it.
That's true. That is so true.
Well, there's also a video I did for the ISSA on quality, and that's out there on YouTube somewhere. But if you look up Ed Selkow quality, you'll find it. It was a short interview I did for an ISSA convention. But excuse me.
It's
Quality.
Selkow quality, right? So
Yeah.
I can put the link in here as well.
Quality defined. Quality defined.
Perfect.
And that's what the problem is that nobody can define it. Okay. And you hear stuff like, well, we have wonderful people. We dust, we vacuum. Yeah, you and everybody else. All right. And you ain't special. Sorry.
You're not wrong.
And I really feel for the folks that are there's a group of people that are unhappy with with the public persona of their trade. And what they're trying to, instead of like swallowing it and just say, okay, look, that's the way it is, they're obsessed with this idea that we're going to raise the standard. And now we're finally going to get the respect that we've always needed to be scrubbing toilets, because now we know how important a clean bathroom is. All right. Which we didn't, we had no idea of any of that, just a few years ago. It's like nonsense. What nonsense. Okay. Very, very simply. And there's a great story attached, which I'll let you dig it up yourselves. But quality is just meeting the specifications. Quality is meeting the specifications. It doesn't mean clean. It doesn't mean fast. It doesn't mean healthy. It doesn't mean any of that. Okay. It's strictly meeting the specifications. Okay, and take a look at that. If you consider that for a minute, this came from one of the gurus of the quality control business by a fellow named Philip Crosby, and he was the quality control guy for AT&T at one point. And he wrote a book called Quality is Free, where he put forth the idea that quality didn't mean anything other than meeting the specifications. Now, that we can do. Meeting the specifications is something we can all do. All right. Now, there's a tension. There's a tension between meeting the specifications, okay, and giving the appearance of meeting the specifications. For example, okay, you'll have in the scope of work, you'll have that everything's, all the desks going to be dusted nightly. Okay. All right. Well, that makes perfect sense, right? The fact is that it takes 2 to 3 days for dust to form. And if they're taking time dusting 100 desks on a nightly basis, it's unnecessary. Okay, so there is this tension between what quality really is, and then the perception of quality by our clients and by the occupants of the properties that we service.
That's interesting. So you're right. It might say that we need to do, again, you said like dusting of desks. But if dust takes 2 to 3 days, then dusting every day seems like a waste of time, right?
Right.
Interesting.
Well,
Interesting.
and exactly like that, we're going to vacuum everything. Well, you know what? Everything doesn't need to be vacuumed. Okay. You vacuum where it's necessary, right? Look, if nobody went in that conference room, there's no need to vacuum it. It just it's not necessary. Right? So like I said, there's this tension between meeting the specifications and then the illusion of meeting the specifications by the client and by the building occupant.
Now, a question they asked here that kind of segues into it right now is, let's say that I am meeting the specifications based on like, are you saying, right? Like, okay, so this doesn't need dusting, this doesn't need vacuuming, maybe I'll come back tomorrow, right? We're not doing it all the time. How does that scare employees that they're going to work less hours, one? And does that mean that since I'm getting faster as what I'm doing, do I charge the clients less, or does that just mean that I improved my margin?
Okay. All right. Well, listen, that's one of the great debates with the Facebook people. And by the way, there's an entire subculture of the cleaning industry that have wedded themselves to Facebook. Okay. And so now there's Facebook wisdom. All right. Which is not wisdom at all, really. There's an awful lot of nonsense on there.
So let's say that I'm doing what you told me, right? I'm looking at my processes, and dust takes 2 to 3 days. Okay, I'm gonna save some time on dusting. Oh, they didn't use this room. I'm not gonna vacuum. So I start kind of tightening up my processes. Does that mean I need to charge my client less, or is the whole game, this is what I quoted you and what I'm doing. If I get faster and better and save time, then that's my margin. What's the answer there?
Okay, the answer is that, and again, this is not popular with the Facebook crew, but there is nothing preventing change of processes in between uh, employees. When one person quits and another one comes in, what you do is you acclimate the new person to, okay, this is the system that they're going to use, and it's not quite the same as what they used to do. In other words, the previous person did it a little bit differently.
Got it. Got it.
Okay. So these are, while the turnover is it's constant trouble, in a sense, what you can do is you can turn that into an advantage. All right. And then
Charging the
as
like,
far
do
as
I change
charging,
my
yeah,
pricing? Yeah, do I
yeah.
change my
It's,
pricing? That's
yeah,
like a huge
yeah.
debate right now.
When it comes to the pricing, what I want to do is I want to utilize my skill and my knowledge on increasing production. Okay, I want that to be a feature of our company. Okay, and a nice way to put this, I never, ever, ever once was sorry that I was the low bidder on a 25-story building.
Hmm.
Was just never was never unhappy about that. And once you're inside, then you figure out, okay, all right, now this is what we're going to do here to increase production here. This is what we're going to do here. Okay, so there is an obsession with as far as what the pricing is for the clients. And I maintain, look, if if I can win the contract by being more productive than any of my competitors, I don't have a problem with that at all.
Makes sense because you did the job of increasing your production, right? So you can actually afford it because you did your job. So it makes
Well,
sense.
but that's the advantage of experience. That's why you don't put
100%.
that's why you don't put the guys that doing the beauty parlors in high-rise buildings.
Now
They're
you can still build a big business because again, your margins are still falling close to other people's margins just because you're so good with increasing your productivity, right?
Mhm, mhm,
Okay.
mhm. All right.
And
Now,
so
now, now,
how
now, what plugs into that, Angel? What plugs into that? That's very, very important. Is the misunderstanding by just about everybody on Facebook. Let me ask you a question: where on your client's profit and loss statement is cleaning expense found?
yeah, you said it right there, right? Expense.
It's an expense. Okay. And what does a prudent business person do with non-productive expenses?
Lower them. You always lower cost, increase
That's
revenue, right?
right. That's right. So they're cussing out these horrible managers about them just exercising their fiduciary responsibility to the owner of the building by the judicious use of the correct vendors that have an acceptable level of quality at a lower cost.
Makes sense. No,
Well,
that's
people, no,
that's
wait,
their
wait, wait,
job.
no, wait a minute, hold on. Right about now, there are folks throwing spitballs and stuff at the screen, so
You know,
that's
the
okay. I've
smart,
been no,
the smart CEOs, they know what you're talking about, right? Because they know again, it's every time I hear you talk, it's like what game you got to understand what game you're playing.
Mhm.
I think a lot of people they don't understand what game they're playing, right? Somebody said like it's not sure it's about if you want 30, 40, 50% margin, go with the small ones, but if you want
Yeah.
to play big and build something big, you got to play ball with where they're playing ball, you know? And so that's why I think this topic is so important. Weird question. Well, not weird question. Good question here that someone asked. So let's say back to the timing thing. You said you would time them, you see what they're doing, and you're okay. Okay, these are some areas of improvement. Did you ever get like this response from an employee that, well, if I get faster, I might lose my job or work less hours? Or not lose my job, but work less hours, therefore I get paid less? Or does that not as horrible as it seems as a leader, should you not worry about that, or should you always have work for them? That's kind of
Well,
like a catch-22, I guess.
yeah, it really is. But, the simple answer to the question at the end of the day, okay, you are replaceable. Now, we don't
Mm,
like to do that, okay, but that's the fact of the matter, is that you are replaceable. All right. And the opportunity
makes sense.
comes when you have people, the opportunity comes when people are changed. In other words, somebody new comes in. The other thing, the other possibility is just changing people around. Okay. In other words,
Mm,
okay, you're now taking care of, these floors, and we're going to do away with the bathroom cleaner. Okay. So you pick up the bathrooms on your floor here now with this new system. And look, folks will play or not play. And all this is interconnected, because the question you're asking is in one sense solved by another principle, where you always have people in your back pocket. You
mm, yeah.
always have people in your back pocket. Okay. And until you figure that out, all right, you're going to be back to that constant nightmare of, gee, I can't find anybody. There aren't, nobody wants to work. Well, you're working.
Uh,
So somebody's working. Okay. And that's a big misunderstanding. It's a big misunderstanding.
No, I think you're so right. And I mean, that's up to the leader too, right?
Mhm.
Because like you said, you made a really good point. As a cleaner, you are replaceable, even as a leader, right? But cleaners are replaceable. So it's like, if you get faster, you're almost solidifying your job even more, because it's like, this person is following the process. They are the people we're looking for. They are fast, but you got to be able to communicate that to them. So, but I could see how a leader that doesn't know how to lead might be scared, like, oh man, if I ask them to be faster, it's like they think I'm asking them to lose hours versus be efficient at their job, right?
Mhm. There is something that I've called the revenue pyramid. Okay. And what the revenue pyramid is, very simply, is if you look at your stream of revenue at three different levels, okay, highest profit margins are your foundation down at the bottom of the pyramid. Okay. There's a medium, and then there's a top. All right. And when I tell people what the profit margins are on some of those big buildings, their heads explode. They just can't believe it. But on a beautiful building, on a big beautiful building, there might only be somewhere between 3 to 8% profit. Okay. Here, let me give you one. I'll give you one. Okay. Biggest cleaning contract in the world. The biggest cleaning contract in the world was the World Trade Center. Yeah, because there was two of them. Okay. And that was the biggest cleaning contract in the world. Okay. Now, the way that worked was the cleaning service that won the contract, and I worked with one of the guys that had the contract, that sold it and managed it. All right. The way it worked was the unions controlled the tenant space. You have tenant space, and then you have common space. Okay. And essentially all you were bidding on was the common space, because the union controlled the tenant space. And so the way that worked was that the bid was at cost. The bid was at cost. We're going to
Mm,
charge the World Trade Center what it cost us. Now,
that's
now here's the,
wild.
now here's the good part. The good part is we make money by partnering with management, and we make money on all the extras. So if Miss Spatula up on the 15th floor wants her carpets done, she can have anybody she wants do them. She can call anybody she wants to come clean the carpets. But we control the elevator. So what you got to do is you got to drag your carpet cleaning equipment up 15 stories to get there. And very simply, it's not going to happen. But you made money on the extras. Okay. And that's one of the things that I run into few people that understand that. There's a handful of people that get that, but that's the way an awful lot of it works. And I'm sorry, but there isn't anybody making 15% down in the central business district of any city, period. It's just not happening.
I
Not on
think
the
you just touched
janitorial.
on something so important. You're right. Cross upselling and one-time special projects in such a big building like that, you would rather have access and control, almost not control, but you would rather, you wouldn't be able to be the one that always gets those special projects or gets an opportunity to win them by playing there, right?
Well,
So I love that.
yeah, well, here's the kicker on that, okay, is that you would split that money with the management people. So that you'd cut the
Hmm.
you'd cut the management company in on it. So they're there
Interesting.
wanting to sell your services.
Got it. Okay, so they're like your strategic partner in there as well, because every tenant, again, you're talking about you win the big building, but every tenant gets specialized services. You become the vendor with the management company, and now next thing you know, those special services have way higher margins than you would have ever gotten on the building. So now you're making more money. Interesting.
What's funny was, I see from time to time, I see, let me see, the client asked me to wash dishes. Is that a good idea? It's like, yes, any extra services that you can provide, okay, will lead you to other extra services that you can charge for. Okay, there was a boom down here in Florida at one point when the eco green maniacs were able to get a rule about the disposal of fluorescent lights. Okay, it came out of nowhere. Okay, you can't throw a fluorescent tube in the dumpster anymore. Okay, which leaves out that wonderful 10:30 p.m. contest of can you land that fluorescent tube into the dumpster from standing here? Okay, now what about standing there?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so I mean that became an opportunity for extra revenue. Okay, we made a lot of money with like selling light bulbs, changing light bulbs. Another one was touch up painting. We weren't we're not painters, okay, but tell you what, I mean. There's nothing preventing us from touching in hallways and public areas and so forth. Nothing preventing us from doing that. There is a whole bunch of services that can be sold without doing anything to your janitorial program.
I really like that because part of, again, we're playing the same game, right? We're playing the increasing margins game. That's what we're all playing here. Let me ask you something then. So we talked about the employees, like if they get efficient, they get to grow with us, but you got to set the right expectations with them. Also, you can switch them from buildings. So we're talking a lot about people. We talked about the process, like the production line approach. We'll put your quality defined video with ISSA here. Did you say skip cleaning? I don't know if I got the definition. What was skip cleaning? Or do you really mean like skip some of
Skip
the
cleaning,
cleaning?
yeah,
Is that
yeah.
really what it meant, like what we talked about?
That it really is like it sounds.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, what skip cleaning is, and I think I'm one of the actual originators of, and it was because of cleaning hundreds and hundreds of banks, but probably the industry expert on drive-by cleaning.
I love that.
It's
I
a drive.
love
It's
that.
a drive-by cleaning, and there's a certain amount of, let's see how to put this. There's a certain amount of service that's not missed. They just don't miss it.
I like that.
Well,
No,
look,
so
and listen. What people have to wrap their brains around is that there are these contradictions. Okay, and as a business person, as a smart business person, living with contradictions is a big piece of growing a substantial company.
I agree. No, I the hmm. And I think this only comes with like experience, knowledge, challenging what you know, hanging out with people like you, right? Is there, so somebody asked here, how detailed, when you would get a new building, how detailed do you develop a workflow personally? Like, do you begin really intensely or do you edit as you go? Like, do you just kind of get in there, try it out, and then start making small edits as you go?
No, you got to know the whole thing before.
Okay.
But before you walk in the door, you need to have the whole thing. And let me give you an example. What I always did was I created a 3-week startup plan, and it was in great detail. And what it did was it outlined on what day before the startup does a certain task take place. Okay. And if you think about the list of things that has to happen inside of a new account, okay, it's very, very possible to put together a list that can be used over and over and over again. This startup process I formulated, and it was for 110 buildings on a military base. You don't want to screw around.
Yeah.
They know what's
They'll
happening.
catch
No, they know
everything,
what's
right?
happening. So it was so the planning was everything. Okay. One of the interesting experiences that I'll never forget was the first time when I went to work for this company out of DC. Was the first time we started a building up, and I'm surprised how it went. The building had X amount of employees. Okay. Say it was like 30 people. Okay. And what we did was we sat down and mapped out exactly where all those 30 people are. And okay, the each floor is X amount of square feet. Okay. We know that our standard is going to be X amount of square feet per hour. Okay. So now we can determine where the employee goes to clean, what their area is, what their zone is. Okay. And then what happened was interesting because he says, okay, now what do we do when there's 2 people missing and there's only 28 people? He says, okay, all right, now this is what we're going to do. We're going to we're going to move this over here. Okay. And we're going to put this person over here. Okay. So that's settled. Now, what do we do if there's 5 people out and there's only 25 people? And we kept going down and down and down until we knew how half of the crew would be assigned if half of the crew didn't show up. And I tell you what, you haven't lived until you've been 75 people short in a Class A building. Okay. Look, man, I mean, to get a great big Class A building, God is smiling on you. But, staffing it and figuring out how it gets cleaned is all up front. It is all up front. It's all in the preparation. Did that answer the question?
Yeah, no, it 100%.
Yeah.
100%. This is really how do you say it? I like that you come and break initial beliefs or quote unquote truths that a lot of people hold because of the quote unquote I say quote unquote that they've done, right? But the higher up you get, the bigger the company. I've heard a lot of people that are driven like dove into the industry that say things like it's okay to have a 3 to 8% margin. It's okay to have a 10% margin. Like I'm looking at the long game. I'm growing this account. I'm gonna get so good at this account that when I increase my speed and my quality, right, like you said, quality meeting expectations, my margin's gonna be there. I'm not worried. Let me ask you this question then real quick, because I think this is super important. So if I'm a 1 million to 2 million commercial cleaner versus a 15 million, I feel 15 million have more resources to improve their
Mhm.
productivity, more team. Someone like a 1 million, I mean, you could have a $1 million company with 30, 40 employees, right? So like my question is, if I'm a smaller company real quick, how do I set these processes up if I don't know if I even have the manpower to do so? Do I use technology? Do I just visit accounts more often and it's just a grind until I hit a certain amount? Like what? I hope that was a good question. I went all over the place there. So
It's a
a
question.
$1 million company, right? They don't have maybe the manpower or the money to improve processes like a bigger account or bigger company, sorry. What are some non-traditional methods that could work or cheaper methods that could still get me to improve my production?
Let's back up. Let's
Yeah,
let's let's back up a little bit, okay?
it is a weird question. Like it's a weird question. So if I'm a $1 million commercial cleaning company
Right.
with a small team, how can I keep check on my quality and improve my productivity?
Two separate things. One is anybody that was around, I think around the late 80s, early 90s, there were business books. And one of them it was a big business book, and everybody had it on their desk. But one of the things one of the keys, In Search of Excellence was the name of the book, In Search of Excellence. And one of the things that excellent companies did was what they called management by wandering around. And I have had engagements on a consulting basis with folks who believed incorrectly that success in the cleaning business is in direct relation to the distance between the owner and the toilet. And that's
Hmm.
crazy. That is crazy. When I was in charge of 1/3 of the United States for a national company, okay, guess where I went first? I went to the front line everywhere. I wanted to talk to the people who were actually doing the cleaning. I wanted to find out what's going on, what works, what doesn't work here. Okay. I could generally get a better picture of what the management situation was by talking to the frontline people. So that was the first place that I would go.
I like that. Well, you said the book was called Search on
In
Excellence,
search of excellence, yeah.
In Search of Excellence.
In search of
That
excellence,
right there
yeah.
is huge.
Yeah, that was a very, very, very. I'm not sure exactly how all of that is judged, but in the business world, that was a bestseller for a number of years. And there was a lot
Search
of
of
great
Excellence.
stuff in there. I mean, it was a great book. It really was.
Yeah, I'm gonna link it in here. A lot of your experience comes from just from raw knowledge of going out there learning, and I think that's what a lot of us need, right? Just to read more, try more, do more, learn from the right people.
Well,
I like that.
being out there and getting chopped up. I mean, I got all the scars, so that's the other piece. You know.
So if I'm summarizing what you said, which is simple advice that again gets overseen sometimes. If I'm a small company, I'm going to the front line, right, of the company of the account that I'm cleaning,
Okay.
and I'm walking around, right? I'm walking around, I'm looking at things and doing my inspections, correct?
Hmm.
Okay.
Okay. On that note, okay. Let me throw something very, very important in. What happens is that everybody is concerned about getting new accounts. Okay. The most successful company that I owned and started was the one that I knew I was going to sell the day I started. And before I ever made a single sales call to get an account, I arranged a steady source of employees. I had to figure out before I got accounts, how could I develop a steady source of employees? And that's one of the missing things right now. The people that are yelling about, gee, there's nobody wants to work. I can't find people. Well, you're a little late to the game to figure that out. Who did you think was going to do all the cleaning when you started? Okay, you should have had an idea where the employees are going to come from. That was my fourth company, and what it was I understood that that marketing and getting new accounts was the same importance as getting employees. No employees,
No
it doesn't
account,
matter
yeah.
what accounts you get. Okay, you have to develop a steady, reliable source for employees. And once I got that figured out, what was really neat was, if you keep doing something, over and over and over, eventually you get it right. Okay. And what I had realized at this point was that a source of employees was just as important as all of the sales and marketing stuff that goes on. It is the same. And after getting that figured out, we did not advertise for employees for close to 10 years.
Hmm. So it's part of, like what you said, it's part of the process and the people.
And the
Having
planning.
that steady, yeah.
And the planning.
Oh.
The planning is key. But if you're thinking about starting a cleaning company, all right, and developing a steady source of employees is not part of your initial strategy, you need to rethink it. What's funny is that I always explain to people, mainly people outside that are trying to understand something, like inside the cleaning business. And I told them, I said, look, every single cleaning contractor is exactly the same. Okay. And I don't care if they're doing $50,000 a year or $50 million a year. They're all the same. They want more contracts, period. End of report. They want more contracts. And it's kind of like it's a single-minded approach, okay, that leaves them with not enough juice. Okay. And the way I would explain this was, look, every single cleaning contractor is a 14-year-old boy at the Friday night high school dance with one thing on their mind. Okay, you take it from there. What are all 14-year-old boys at the Friday night dance thinking about?
Trying to get the girl.
You got it.
Mm-hmm.
You got it. Okay. So that single-mindedness blinds them to the rest of what has to happen.
Which is the actual fulfillment.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting. So because if I don't have an efficient stream of where I'm gonna hire employees, when I win an account, I might actually win it at a certain number and margin, but if I now need to go and hire, interview, and I don't have a source, my cost just went up as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
On that. So employee acquisition just got more expensive, so margins get lower. So you just had these streams kind of already set up, right? So that when you won an account, you knew what you were gonna get.
My most successful company at one time we employed 400 and just over 490 employees. Okay, and when I started out, okay, like I said, if you keep doing something, you get better and better and better at it. Okay, so this was my fourth cleaning service that I started. Okay, and what I understood was that there had to be a reliable source of employees permanently. Okay. And so here's what I did. What I did was I attended a workshop for social service agencies, job coaches. In social service agencies, at least the good ones, what they're trying to do is they're trying to get the people that they serve onto a job.
Mm-hmm.
Trying to get these folks jobs. Okay. So the responsibility of the job coach was to find jobs for their people. Okay. So I sat through this whole thing. If I remember correctly, it was a couple hours. So, I mean, but I'm sitting there in a nice suit and a tie, and just so that at the end of it, I could stand up with a handful of business cards and say, I am an employer. I need connections with you. And that was one of the factors why we did not have to advertise for 10 years. I was able to pick up a phone and say, okay, we're starting a building here. What do you have? And what was really funny was we had from Catholic Social Services, we had a fellow that served there. And it was when there was Vietnamese people coming across. And I'd pick up the phone, dial it. And, hello, Fab Tong, how are you? And he'd say, Ed, how many you want? And whatever I said, I mean, that's what he, so it was a whole lot different than, my first time where I'm just dying, putting another awful unworkable ad in the classified section that was only going to bring me winos and junkies and stuff. Okay. Florida has an unusual amount of people coming into town that are completely worthless. And looking for a cleaning job is one of the first things that they do. And I remember being so frustrated with all of that before I got this figured out. But once you get it figured out, you got it.
Yeah, you can have what people call like sustainable growth, not lucky growth, right? You get an account, then you lose it, you can't sustain it, now you lose employees, right? Quick question for you.
Let me just finish that. Was when I
Yeah.
went to that workshop for employees, I had not made the first move to sell an account. It was before I started marketing.
Hmm.
It was that important. I realized it.
You're right. Most people don't realize that. And then they're scrambling like, "Oh, I can't win an account because I don't have employees." And it's like, "No, that's not how it works." I love like if you know you have the workforce, it's much easier.
Mm-hmm.
Let me ask you a question. What what would you say to someone so they're looking at this and they're going, "Okay, I'm getting a lot of nuggets. I'm gonna read the book, watch the videos. I'm gonna go and time my cleaners. I'm gonna see where we're falling short on our process." Let's say one of them says, "You know what, though? Like I went through it, and I think I've squeezed out every bit of productivity on this particular account. What are my options after that? Do I just leave it running perfectly, or is there always something?"
I never let up on the production thing. I never let up on the production thing.
Yeah, so basically, if I already feel like I'm basically like super productive in that account,
Oh,
and
what do you do when you reach the top?
yeah, when you think you don't, there's nothing more to produce here.
Okay, you're probably missing something.
I love it.
You're probably missing something. If you think you got to the end, you're probably missing something.
And again, just to reiterate here, so if you feel like I am missing something, right? What I guess let me get the question right this time. This one's on me. So I already reached the top. I don't think I can increase productivity. How do I audit this particular case?
I'm
Are we
sorry. How do
back
you
to
audit
the
it?
yeah, how do you audit the building to see if there is if I what I'm missing? Because you're saying you're probably missing something, which I would agree with. How do I
Yeah, you got to
yeah,
be in there. You got to observe, or you have to have somebody observing for you. Okay.
okay.
One of the coolest things I ever saw was when I worked for one of the great companies in our industry, and it was pretty much where I got a PhD in as far as the cleaning business goes. There was a man out of Atlanta that had a rapidly growing, very, very large company that essentially was along the Southeast US. And when he sold out, the people that I worked for hired him as a consultant. And what he told the owner of the company I worked for was, look, as long as sales are strong and high enough, it doesn't matter what you lose. And with that, he was immediately thrown out of the office because this was the guy that said that he does not understand how do you lose a building. And here's the consultant saying, don't worry about it. Lose whatever you
Hmm.
want. Okay. But one of the things before he got thrown out of the office, one of the things that he did was he would bring it. Now, these were all big buildings. This was, none of these were, 30, 40, 50,000 square foot buildings. These were all larger buildings. Okay. Starting at 100,000 square feet. That was a small one. Okay. What they would do is they would get a newly graduated engineer just out of college, hand him a stopwatch, a column or pad, and a pencil, and teach him a 3-foot stride so that they could measure things just by walking. Okay.
Hmm.
And what he was doing was he was retuning the account by balancing out the workforce. Okay. So what he was doing was he was looking at the square footage of the areas that individual people were cleaning and see where that can be combined with another area. Okay. And essentially what he was doing was he was reconfiguring the areas. Okay. You couldn't really do this in a new building because everybody's still trying to figure out, where the lights are and all that stuff. Okay. But to make a long story short, he went through 2 buildings for the company that I worked for and made his first year's annual salary in 2 buildings. Okay. And it was all by observation with a stopwatch and measuring.
I like that.
It really was brilliant. I mean, it really was brilliant. And that was a horrible guy that ran that was an awful person who, I mean, the reason why he was okay losing buildings was because he was consistently the insanely undoable lowest bidder. Like, this is not possible. You can't clean it like this. You can't do it.
Yeah.
And he didn't care. By the way, in the subcontracting world, now we have national maintenance companies that do the exact same thing. They're doing the exact same thing. They sit down at the conference table and they don't get up until they get a yes. And what they do is they lower the price until until they're getting $35 to clean a drugstore.
That's not, yeah. Interesting. And you're not wrong. I mean, that's a common, when you're competing against the national account, they're gonna do some crazy numbers over there, right? So, at what point, so let's say so you said people, process, tools. At what point do you know when to either replace a person or move them to another building based on their productivity? Do you have is there anything that you follow specifically or methodology, or is it more like you really love just watching?
No, part of it has to do with getting to know who the frontline people are. Okay. And one of the most amazing things I ever saw was that company that I was very fortunate to work with. They had 10,000 employees. And I saw the owner go into the building, okay, put his arm around one of the bathroom ladies, and he knew her name. 10,000 employees. He knew the lady that cleaned the bathrooms. He knew her name. And so there's an entire human side to this. And that is the missing element, okay, in a lot of these conversations. Okay. And what I would point out is, and you can put this in notes, that I was very, very influenced by an article. This is horrible.
Okay. Can't remember the article.
No Little People.
No Little People?
No Little People by Francis Schaeffer. No Little People by Francis Schaeffer. And it had to do with the value of the individual employee. And all of our conversation up to this, that they're expendable and stuff like that, we're leaving out a human element. And that human element is what holds it's the glue that holds a well-managed company together.
Mm-hmm. I would agree.
It's the value of the person. Okay. And that's an important concept. It's an important concept that every single person, including the ones that don't show up, including the ones that, stole the tape recorder out of every single one of them has value at some level. Now, we may not like them, okay, but they have value in and of themselves, and they deserve a certain amount of dignity.
Agreed.
And
Agreed.
To take the dignity away is going to get you an unhappy workforce that is not going to back you up when you need it, and will be miserable the whole time they're with you, and their memories of you will always be horrible.
I think that I'm going to read that book or that article, The No Little People. My Francis Schaefer. You said something, I really like what you're saying, because now if I'm going into an account and if I look at my people and I value my employees, if they're meeting the specifications that were laid out, then we're providing quality for the client. And I think that connection is not done a lot of the times. If you look through the processes and everything's done, then you're basically good.
Mhm.
And then, like you said, but if you just want to keep getting more out of that account, that's where cross sells, upsells, special projects come in. I really like everything. My whole job now is gonna be, and we're gonna just piece this together and with all the links and all the articles and everything, it's gonna be so much fun. There's a lot of value here. Is there any questions that you feel I'm missing? I went through all of them personally that we got. I guess, do you have any fun, non-traditional methods that could work for somebody? I mean, they're all used to technology, right?
To accomplish
For
what? To accomplish what?
faster or better cleaning,
Oh, okay.
or even inspections or something.
Well, inspections are they make or break a company. I heard a commercial property manager, a real professional, and what he used to say was, "You can only expect what you inspect."
Whoa, I really love that.
Yeah, no, and I mean when you're doing a walkthrough and this guy's running his finger underneath the bathroom sink on that pipe, it's not oof, okay.
Oh, boy.
No, this guy's serious. This guy's serious. To sum up, there is a huge human element here. Okay. And I'm not sure everybody is actually equipped personally in order to be successful. We are not all the same. Okay. If you're somebody that can garner loyalty, that's half the game. That's half the game is loyalty.
Hmm.
You give me 3 loyal people, I can do absolute miracles. People that I don't have to watch my back, that we're on the same side. They don't even have to be that bright or that experienced. They really don't. But if they're loyal, that's a determining factor for successful employee. I got in trouble.
I it
I got in trouble with when I was working with the Wall Street folks. I got in trouble with the company owner because what I told him was, I said, look, I said, if you want to, if you want to, if you want to learn about organizational management, okay, watch The Godfather. He came unglued.
I mean, you're not wrong though.
That's all I want is you give me somebody that's loyal, okay, and we can do just about anything.
I like it. I like it.
So develop the loyalty.
Out of everything we spoke about, because there's a lot of, again, processes, articles, books, videos. There's a lot of knowledge that you threw in here. That last line that you said, if you can basically trust, right, and give that vibe of I trust my employees and have 3 to 5 that you can trust,
Mm-hmm.
then you know that they're doing their job. They're inspecting, they're making sure things are done at a high level, which at the end of the day is, is going to be a strong beginning for your productivity. And keeping that account, most importantly, right? Retaining that client.
I had
I'm so
I,
glad you touched on that.
I had a wonderful experience, and when I talk about this great company that I work for, that I got my PhD in, this was an amazing fellow. And at one point, I was kind of like the golden boy. I had signed a whole bunch of the downtown buildings and had the largest cleaning contracts in 2 different cities. There was offers from all kinds of competitors. Okay. And and I would very, very simply say, I would walk through fire for the man that I work for. There is no amount of money. There's nothing you can say that's going to get me out of here. It's not going to happen.
I love that. I love that.
I've had a couple of people like that. I've had a couple of people that I've reported to or had bosses that were just, absolutely. I don't even know if they were great people, but they were people that I cared about because they cared about me,
No, I agree. And what you said, you're right. I'm glad that you even recommended No Little People and that you touched on that because you're right. Most of this training we touched on people are dispensable, decrease costs, increase productivity. Let's change them buildings. Let's look at, but you're right. When you find those ones that trust you, you trust them, you take care of them, they're going to do everything in their power to service that account to the T
And you
and
have to
retain
step
that account.
and you're gonna step out of your standard situation from time to time to help them out.
100%.
You're gonna do some, you're gonna do some things that are like, not done by other people. Okay. If somebody on my
Um,
staff, if their kid was sick and in the hospital, I'd go. I'm going to visit their kid at the hospital.
I love that.
They don't forget that.
I love that.
When somebody when there's a need, from a human standpoint, I'm going to step up to the pump because it goes back to that dignity thing.
Agreed. The respect and dignity, the respect you have for your employees and what they do for you.
Mm-hmm.
Let me ask you. So people obviously through this training and through what you've posted and the knowledge that you've dropped into the space, I mean now they'll see the leadership, the knowledge, everything through here. If, what else do you want to leave people with, regardless if it's productivity or not right now? Is there anything you just want to leave the people with that watch this training?
Yeah, just remember the tattoo I'm going to get across my forehead. The business of cleaning is only about numbers. Concentrate on the numbers.
I love that. Someone has to get that tattoo now. You're not wrong. I love that. Well, Ed, it's again, that line alone makes you just think. Like now, if you're watching this training, ask yourself, where could you improve your numbers? What account can you? I love what you said. You can only expect what you inspect, so don't expect your employees to perform at X level if you've never inspected it, never trained them, like you said, never timed them, watched them, like done the right job for them. So, Ed, it's been a hell of a training, to be honest with you. This is awesome for me. Yeah, I just wanted to thank you. Yeah, is there anything else before we close it out? I feel like every time I'm gonna ask you, is there anything else? We're gonna come out with 20 things.
Yeah, listen, anybody that wants to go further, if you stick my name in Google, I think I'm down to like 8 full pages on Google, but I'm easy to get a hold of. And what I do now essentially is work with individual companies on some on projects, limited projects, and some on an ongoing basis. So if anybody is looking for that kind of service, I'm here to serve.
Yes, and we'll make sure we put what would be the best way to reach you? Would that be email, LinkedIn?
The building maintenance pres at Gmail.
Okay.
And of course, and then Facebook. But if you could put my phone number out there, that'd be great.
Okay. Yeah, I'll put.
And it's important that they don't text. If you have my phone number, don't text me. Okay.
Call.
I have this strict rule about texting. Okay. If I don't know you, you can't text me. And you can only text me if I have seen you naked or you have seen me naked. Okay.
But we text.
So what that is my kids, okay, a couple ex-wives, okay, and 1 or 2 really, really bad internet dates, okay. So
That is what a rule. What a rule.
It works. It's a good rule.
Well, I appreciate you then for texting me, preparing for this. So people are gonna be like, wait a minute. No, I'll make sure we put your email, LinkedIn, Facebook, and make sure we put don't text, only call. No, this has been awesome, Ed. I really appreciate it. I'm also going to all the links, books, videos, your articles. I'm gonna basically link everything in there so that they can be watching as you're like watching whatever you train them on. Because now I want to go read In Search of Excellence, No Little People. I'm gonna definitely pull up your quality defined because I think what you said right there is worth $1 million. What's quality? Meeting the specifications. So guess what? You better know those specifications like the back of your hand. Most people, they go clean and you even ask them for a scope of work, huge one, and they're like, "Oh, well, it's not finalized or defined yet." And I'm like, "Oh my God." So what you said right there, the 3 week startup plan, skip cleaning is huge. So true, right? Production line approach to service, people process tools, zone cleaning versus team cleaning. My favorite was the 6% absentee on the buildings at any given time. You dropped, the reason I'm recapping everything is because you dropped a lot of knowledge in here, and I'm so excited for them.
This was a lot of fun, Angel. So listen, thanks for giving me the stage for a little bit here. I appreciate it.
No, thank you. I just want to say I appreciate you for pushing through this because I know it's not easy whatsoever.
Well, that's great, Angel. Again, thank you, and we look forward to getting some feedback on the event that you're putting on.
Yes, no, I'll make sure I do, and I'm also gonna link your bid book in here. I know we didn't
Oh,
talk
great.
about it, but I'm gonna just link it in there.
Oh, terrific.
Some
That'd
extra
be great.
sales.
That'd be great.
All right, Ed.
All right.
Appreciate you, brother.
All right, my friend. You take care,
Have a
Angel.
good day.
Thank
You
you.
too.
Bye bye.
Bye.